Well, barely a day after smartphones, computers, and other electronics were exempted from U.S. tariffs hitting China, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says that they will be subject to other tariffs within weeks. Lutnick says they'll be part of a package covering semiconductors similar to the new auto tariffs. Lutnick linked domestic supply of such electronics to national security. Trump reinforced that message, promising a security review of the sector and saying the original duties were simply moving to what he called a new tariff bucket. Meanwhile, back in this province, businesses are getting caught in the tariff war crossfire, including one in Brampton that says it's now facing a $36,000 bill. Tyler Cheese has that story.
It's the uncertainty of what tariff is going to be imposed on which country.
It's a guessing game that landed Taurus Craco with a big bill. The Brampton industrial woodworking machinery importer ships a lot of its product to companies in the U.S. So, to get ahead of President Trump's April 9th reciprocal tariffs on countries around the world, Taurus Craco kicked things into high gear.
My shipping crew worked late until Monday night to build crates and packaging and pallets to ship our machinery. The last truckload left Taurus Craco machinery in Brampton at approximately 4 p.m., knowing that it's 2 hours to the border.
But with long wait times at the border, the shipment crossed into the U.S. minutes after the deadline.
As a result, we have been hit with a approximately $36,000 Canadian tariff that we had certainly not accounted for and by no means can afford.
To make matters worse, later that same day, Trump announced he's pausing the global tariffs for 90 days. But it was too late. The company's been told they'll still have to swallow the cost of shipping during the short window that tariffs were applied. It's just one example of the confusion businesses are facing with the on-again, off-again threat of tariffs.
It is near impossible for a small business owner to keep up with the many, many changes that we've had over the last 2 months on the tariffs between Canada and the United States. It is just a complete mess.
Many experts have focused on the U.S. tariffs on Canada and Canada's retaliatory tariffs on the U.S., but in this case, the U.S. tariffs on other countries are to blame.
There are lots of Canadian businesses that bring in things from Europe or Asia and then ship into the United States. And so they're not just facing the tariff treatment to Canada, but they're affected by the tariffs that are imposed by the United States on countries around the world.
As the uncertainty around tariffs and shipping continues, some say businesses need to take measures to protect themselves.
You need to be super flexible in both in your supply chain coming in. You need to secure that you still have product and supply and try to source alternative from alternative suppliers in other countries. Not that easy. And the second is you need to start having single contracts acknowledging a tariff uncertainty. Right?
So while Taurus Craco was trying to help its customers by getting ahead of potential tariffs, industry insiders say companies should start adding the extra potential cost of tariffs into shipping agreements for the foreseeable future. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
One passenger is dead, another injured, and the driver of the vehicle arrested after a fiery crash in Caledon. Police were called for a single vehicle collision in the early hours of Sunday. It happened near Bramalea Road and Boston Mills at around 1:30 this morning. Peel paramedics say when they arrived, the car was on fire. One man escaped on his own. Fire crews were able to extricate another. Paramedics rushed that person to hospital with life-threatening injuries. A 21-year-old was found after the fire was put out and was pronounced deceased on the scene. Officers suspect alcohol may have been a factor. Well, the final roadblock to the province taking over maintenance of the DVP and the Gardiner Expressway could be clear by the end of the year.
The whole negotiation, due diligence, supposed to be 2 years, is going to finished hopefully by the end of 2025. At the meantime, because of the upload, we were able to invest in $500 million for public transit. So, for example, we're now starting to really fix our subway stations.
Once the due diligence is done, the highways become the property of the provincial taxpayers, taking on the cost there and freeing up almost $2 billion for repair needs elsewhere. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow and Premier Doug Ford struck the deal nearly a year and a half ago. Well, built as a place to retreat into nature, slow down, camping in custom-built tents and domes, the owners of the Glen Oro Eco Retreat say March's ice storms dealt them a devastating blow.
Each one of these sites we built, with our hands. The team here at the farm created the design for these, brought them to life. All of them have their own unique story to tell, and it's heartbreaking.
The gusting winds and ice brought down branches and trees, damaging the site. Staff members are working to clear the debris and salvage what they can. They are fundraising to also help pay for the work, saying while they have insurance, it does not cover damage from ice. Well, Sophia Campalia joins us now with our first look at your weather forecast. Sophia, what a glorious sunny Sunday it was in some parts of the province, no?
Yes, thank you. It was a beautiful spring day out there today. So many people coming out of hibernation, experiencing arguably one of the better weekends that we've seen over the past few months. Temperatures will be fairly balmy and spring-like into Monday as well. Look at that, 20 in Windsor. Look at the icons, though. It won't be a washout for many of you. This is going to be spotty showers, maybe a few rumbles of thunder, some dry periods as well, along with the temperatures that will be mid-teens. Look at that, 16 for those of you in Ottawa as well. If you want the stable spring weather, though, you're going to have to wait till the week after next before we're arguably in the clear when it comes to the mid-teens. Until then, a bit of a temperature roller coaster. We've got the peak of the cherry blossom blooms happening the week after next as well, April 21st. That's a little bit later than the past few years. Until then, we have this cold regime to deal with. Temperatures a couple degrees below seasonal for the next 10-day period, and some active weather as well, as winter just won't quit, especially north and west of the Superior Shores. We're talking about 15 centimeters of snowfall, messy and dicey driving on the Trans-Canada. This is part of a robust Montana low that will bring rain afternoon and evening to those of you in parts of southern Ontario. The bigger story will be the cool down in behind this system, and yes, more lake effect snow for those of you in the snow belts. I'll have that for you in the long range.
All right, thanks so much. The classic fairy tale is getting a bold new twist on a Toronto stage, one that speaks volumes without saying a single word. Now, this groundbreaking adaptation is completely speechless, designed specifically with deaf audiences in mind. Brittany Billette got a sneak peek.
Yeah, come in closer, Haley.
In this adaptation, the Little Prince goes on a journey like no other, entirely void of spoken words, written for and by the deaf community.
I really feel the show is based on our deaf perspective, but we also welcome the hearing audience to watch and to join in our experiences instead of just thinking about access and looking at things from that view. There are some limitations and challenges in how we think about the world in different ways.
The classic tale is led by an ensemble of deaf artists, and they're working in collaboration with a crew of mostly hearing individuals, a production uncommon in the world of theater.
I think one of the really cool things about this production is that the entire cast is deaf. I have never worked in a deaf-led production before. I'm drawn to doing this work because as a choreographer, it's a non-verbal way of communicating. So I think there's a lot of connection between deaf culture and dance that has been unexplored. And so to bring those two things together in this production is really, really amazing.
The production combines aerial dancing with whimsical projections and visual vernacular, a combination of movement, mime, and ASL.
This is a really good introduction, especially for kids, into deaf culture and how deaf folks communicate with one another and how they create art and what makes a world accessible, and to embrace that through their imagination and through that dreaming.
The play adds other twists on the fairy tale story too. Instead of a fox, they've written in a raccoon, a beloved Toronto mascot. No matter an audience member's ability, actors say there's something here for everyone.
It gives the audience joy, it gives the audience a vision, and opens things up for people. And it's not just for hearing audiences, but deaf audiences as well have never seen that kind of video projection design in a production, and learning that a deaf person has done that. And hopefully we'll have more people working in those fields and more opportunity for deaf artists as well. So getting that perspective is always helpful.
Krentz says one of the most powerful elements of the adaptation is that the Little Prince travels to a new planet, the deaf planet.
it hits home for a lot of deaf people in our audience, and the hearing audience as well. I think they're curious and they want to know what that world can look like and what that world can feel like for deaf people. And that's a fact that people are willing to explore that idea and what a deaf planet could possibly look like.
The Little Prince, a physical theater adaptation, is running until April 19th at Theatre Passe Muraille. Brittany Billette, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, turning to the federal election next, the campaign is now in its fourth week, a week that will see the leaders of the main parties go head-to-head in 2 debates. And ahead of those debates, the leaders have been busy taking their messages and their pledges to potential voters, all in effort to get their votes. And right across the country, JP Tasker has been following today's developments.
With about 2 weeks left in this election campaign, some Canadians say they still don't know which way they'll vote.
Traditionally, I'm someone who aligns more so with the NDP on a lot of issues. But the reality of the situation is it looks like a 2-horse race at this point.
I'm undecided yet, and I'm waiting for the debate of all candidates.
Who's ready to vote for a change?
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is leaning on one word to draw more support: change.
Only a new Conservative government can bring change. We cannot afford a 4th Liberal term. Canada deserves better. Canada deserves change.
In his pitch before this week's leaders' debates, Poilievre is urging people to turn the page on the last Liberal decade, promising a laser focus on cost of living issues if elected.
Mark Carney is hiding again today in the middle of the election campaign he called.
Mark Carney has been off the campaign trail for much of the last 3 days. Part of that time spent dealing with the U.S. tariff threat in his role as Prime Minister.
Look, if the United States doesn't want to lead anymore, Canada will.
Carney is headed into the final stretch, selling himself as the leader best placed to take on Donald Trump and help stabilize a slumping Canadian economy, saying he needs a majority to do so.
We need that mandate because Canada's facing the most significant crisis of our lifetime.
The CBC News poll tracker suggests the Liberals have a 6-point lead over the Conservatives nationwide, and the NDP are in a distant 3rd place.
If you're a Conservative supporter and you're looking at the polls, you might be pretty upset, pretty disappointed.
With time ticking down, every opportunity to reach voters is becoming more consequential.
So that means that the debates will have to shift things dramatically in a way that we haven't seen in a lot of elections.
This is a crucial week ahead. The French debate is on Wednesday, the English one is on Thursday, and the advance polls open the day after that. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
A key figure in Toronto Maple Leaf history, both behind the bench and in the front office, has died. Gerry McNamara was a former NHL goalie, scout, and general manager for the Leafs. He was known to have an eye for talent and helped bring Wendell Clark and Berea Salming to the Leafs, 2 of the most beloved players in the franchise history. Now, McNamara's GM years were tough, but his influence shaped future success. He spent decades in hockey, capping off his career with a Stanley Cup ring as a scout for the Calgary Flames. He died Friday at the age of 90. Welcome back. The Ford government is proposing an expansion of strong mayor powers, adding 169 municipalities to the list and empowering their mayors to hire and fire chief administrative officers, reorganize departments, propose and veto budgets, as well as certain bylaws. So for more on this, I want to bring in David Arbuckle. He is the executive director of the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, representing more than 2,000 municipal staff. David, welcome to the program.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Natalie.
Let's get right to it here. So how are workers reacting to the proposed expansion of mayoral powers?
Yeah, there certainly is quite a bit of anxiety with the province of Ontario essentially quadrupling the number of municipalities and mayors that will have strong mayor powers. We flagged right from the start, Natalie, when they brought this in 2022 and 2023 to larger municipalities, that we had some really significant concerns from a staff perspective. First and foremost being the fact that a mayor can hire and fire municipal staff, whether it be the CAO or whether it be heads of departments. We think that's a move that ultimately has a significantly negative impact overall on the sector.
We have heard, David, from the provincial government that one of the reasons they want to do this is they say they want to cut the red tape. It will help them do things like increase housing. We know housing is an issue in this province. But how are mayors using these powers now? And are they helping them meet the goals like increasing housing?
Right. So over the last 18 months that these powers have been in effect, AMCTO has been working with municipal staff and tracking ultimately how those powers are being used. And to be fair, there have been a couple of examples that the government has used as sort of evidence to support the fact that the powers are being used effectively. But the reality is there's no evidence to support that providing mayors with strong mayor powers, such as I mentioned before, the hiring, firing of staff, the handling of municipal budgets, other things. There's no evidence to support that it is having any effect whatsoever on municipal housing targets and provincial housing targets and meeting those objectives. So it was a bit curious to us that the government decided, again, to expand those powers to municipalities that don't even have housing targets within their municipalities. Many of them don't.
What would you say then, from your perspective, is behind this?
Yeah, ultimately you'd have to ask the new minister and Premier Ford what's behind it. Ultimately, I do feel that they have a belief that ultimately providing a mayor with the powers to, veto their council or ultimately have control over the budget process, that ultimately that is going to point the municipality in a direction that is going to help them move forward with their targets. And as I said before, there are a couple examples where, a mayor has brought forward or vetoed a decision that has empowered the municipality to move forward on a development or two. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you look at the housing targets in those municipalities, strong mayor municipalities or others, they're behind. Many of them are behind in their housing target. So ultimately, there's no evidence to support that these powers are doing anything related to helping the province achieve their target.
David, what would you say to someone who wants the mayor that they elected to have more power?
Right. Yeah. So ultimately, again, the individuals that went forward in the last election, they were brought forward in a manner in which they obviously the councillors are going to have an equal say around the council table. And that's something AMCTO has really advocated for, is we believe in that council staff relationship. We believe that ultimately there's a collective decision making. We believe that a mayor can work collectively with their council in order to move items forward. And again, I think we've seen in some municipalities, I live in Hamilton being one of those, where the councillors have voted and council has voted to remove the powers from the mayor, because I think they're ultimately seeing that the impact or what was promised as an impact in relation to moving housing forward hasn't been met. So ultimately, it's reducing the effectiveness of those individual councillors that were elected to represent their constituencies.
All right, much more, I'm sure, to come on this, and we'll continue to track it. Thank you so much, David. David Arbuckle is the executive director of AMCTO. The government's proposal is open for comment until April 16th. It's set to come into effect on May 1st. Welcome back. Many gathered around the world today to mark Palm Sunday. And for those at St. Peter's Square, that included another brief appearance by the still recovering Pope Francis. Francis did not arrive at the beginning of the service. He did, however, compose the homily, but it was read for him, urging people to remember the victims of war. As the service was ending, Francis made his entrance, and absent was a small apparatus providing oxygen beneath his nose. It still isn't known what part he will play in this week's Easter events. Well, Sophia is back with your long-range forecast, and as we mentioned, a lovely day for many today, but word is it's not going to stay that way. Tell us, snow's on the way.
Yes, say it ain't snow. Don't cancel spring quite yet. But look at Monday, first of all. Let's take the good news. 20 degrees in Windsor. Not a complete washout. Yes, you could have a few rumbles of thunder and some heavier showers. But then here is Tuesday. As we mentioned, winter just won't quit, especially north and west of the Superior shorelines. This is proof of those cold shots of Arctic air on the north end of a Montana low. This is going to mean some treacherous travel on parts of the Trans-Canada. You want to make sure you still have those snow tires on there, including Highway 17. We're in this dry area, this southerly flow and the high pressure on Monday. For many of you in parts of southern Ontario, that rain gets the nickel belt by Monday afternoon. Some heavier slugs and rain possible in parts of southern Ontario into Monday evening and into the overnight period. Here's Tuesday, though. Northwest flow kicks in. You know what that means over the warmer lake waters. Lake effect snow for those of you in the snow belts, and some spotty showers could linger into Tuesday. I hope that this is the last time this season I have to show you a snowfall accumulation graphic. For those of you in the snow belts, could see about 5 centimeters of snowfall Tuesday into Wednesday. It may stick around for a 24-hour period as well, because temperatures for some of you around the Georgian and the Huron shores are hovering around the freezing mark. These are temperatures around 5 to 8 degrees below freezing, or below seasonal rather. Continues into Wednesday. We don't come back up to the seasonal mark until the end of this work week. Until then, some of you will enjoy some downright balmy 20-degree weather and some active weather for a few days later on in the week when that next gust of southerly flow comes in. For the rest of you, if you're looking to do that tire swap to your summer tires, you want to look for a consecutive period of 7 days above 7 degrees. And some of you in the snow belts aren't hitting that until the week after next. Natalie.
Thanks, Fia. Well, earlier today, a ceremony commemorating the Battle of Vimy Ridge and a defining moment in our country's history, one that saw thousands of Canadians give their lives.
The act of remembrance. We simply have to keep the act of remembrance going for our youth to understand what had gone on before them, to allow them to have their freedom, and to live in such a democratic country that we live in.
The battle happened over the course of 4 days from April 9th to 12th. In 1917, just over 108 years ago, 4 divisions of the Canadian Expeditionary Force working together for the first time and supported by a creeping barrage captured most of the ridge during the first day. And it was a moment that cemented Canada's contributions to the First World War. And that is our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Natalie Collada. Have a wonderful night.